All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of CRNA School Prep Academy podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Fennell, CRNA, and today we have a very special guest, Mike, who is a new SRNA. Yay! So this is I love this episode because I really think it's going to inspire some of you out there who maybe have faced rejection. And I know so many of you do, including myself. I was rejected on my first attempt at CRNA school, and plenty of successful CRNAs go on to successful careers who have been rejected from school. And a lot of them are even faculty members. So today, Mike is going to go over with you how he faced 12 failed attempts or 12 rejections at getting or accepted into CRNA school. And this to me is just the definition of resilience and persistence. And I just hope that this can inspire you guys. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm excited to get started. So welcome.
Thank you, Jenny. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to doing this episode ever since we talked, back in January?
Yeah, just about.
Yeah. And you got your good news on Christmas Eve. Is that correct? Am I remembering that?
Yeah, just about that time frame.
Yeah. So what a good Christmas present. So congratulations. You start your journey in May. So that's exciting. So we're going to go ahead and kind of have you introduce yourself. And I just want you to give everyone kind of a background as far as now, just so everyone knows too, a blanket statement, we're going to keep the schools private for this podcast. And if you have questions, reach out to me. But for the most part, we're going to be keeping the school's names off this podcast interview. But go ahead and give us a description on your nursing background and kind of what made you first decide you wanted to pursue CRNA.
Sure. So I'm Mike. I've been in nursing now for a little over 5 years. All 5 years have been in the ICU in two different realms of the ICU, neuro ICU and the medical ICU, which is now basically COVID ICU. So I guess some people would call that like the respiratory or RICU. Little bit of background about myself. Kind of went to school near the West Coast. GPA wise, graduated with roughly over the Dean's List, which I think is like a 3.62. As far as certifications going into applying would be CCRN is the biggest one, which I think should be a big one for everybody. PALS, which is PALS, ACLS, BLS. I did not take the GRE. I didn't see any high quality in it. But a lot of schools do require it. So, and then leadership experience, I did a multitude of things such as charge nurse, clinical liaison, leadership positions, sat on a lot of committees, unit councils, things of that nature. As far as why I wanted to pursue CRNA school, I think it all started a couple of years ago when I had a family member who had a pretty significant surgery that actually was complicated. So it ended up being, I would say, a lot longer than was supposed to be. And it was actually a CRNA that kind of touched my soul. She came out, kind of talked to me for a long while, gave us the updates. No one else really did. And I was just curious from that get-go, like what her role was in the entire procedure. And from that point, I just kind of did some research. I did some shadowing, and that's really what drew my interest about, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And then just kept the idea in the back of my mind and worked towards it. I guess you could put it that way.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, cool. I actually didn't even know that. That's very, very cool. There's something to be said, I think, about being a nurse first and kind of having that bedside manner and rapport with your families and your patients. I really, truly think that makes CRNAs very capable of connecting on a very intimate level with their patients and building that trust from the very beginning. So that's really cool. I didn't know that. And that being said, that's actually one of my favorite things to do is everyone always asks me, being a CRNA, is it lonely? Do you miss the interaction? I enjoy that those first interactions you get, whether that's just moments before they drift off to sleep or that interaction in pre-op when you're pre-oping them and answering their questions or concerns or addressing their family's concerns. That right there to me is one of the most rewarding aspects of what we do, because it's something to be said about building that quick trust and likability with someone. And it just goes so far. It really puts someone at ease. I think patients who go to sleep less anxious wake up in less pain. In fact, that it has been studied and proven to be true. So being a personable person and being able to have interactions with your patients and your families goes a long, long way. So very cool to hear that. All right. So I guess known you want to do CRNA for quite some time. When you first started applying to CRNA school, what were your expectations? Were you thinking that you're going to have one application, or I guess how many schools did you initially apply to? And what were your expectations as far as, did you think you're going to gain acceptance on the first try?
So originally, I think I applied to 3 schools, we'll just say in the first cycle. In the first 3 schools, I thought of one of the 3, I had a pretty decent shot. You know, I had read online forums, I had done the research, I had friends who had applied, and I just thought I had it down pat. Maybe not a guarantee per se, but I thought I had a good shot of being selected. I did end up getting an interview, but the expectation going in originally was I have nothing. If I leave with nothing, it's still going to be disappointing, but I am starting at a point where I need to kind of get my feet moving and get the experience underneath my belt. So at least I could learn some things. I just didn't expect it to go the way it did.
Yes. Great takeaways. Like you said, you have nothing to lose. And sometimes the best way to get started is to just get started and not worry about how perfectly you're going to accomplish that goal. Just do it and learn as you go. But so 3 schools in the first cycle with high hopes, but realistic expectations if things didn't go the right way. I guess when you got you had one interview out of those 3 schools. Is that correct?
I had an interview actually at all 3.
Oh, all 3. That's right. Because you've actually had 12 interviews or 13.
I've had 12 interviews. Yeah. And ironically, in the first set of 3 interviews that I had, I know people mention that like the top choice or top location. Actually, all 3 of them weren't my top choice or number 1 choice. They were just schools that I had been interested in. And I figured, well, and acceptance is a great start. So that's what I was just aiming for at the end of the day.
Awesome. So you kind of almost saw it as maybe even a practice run.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
I kind of took it as maybe if the school really liked me and we kind of got along and I felt like a really good energy and I enjoyed the information that they provided to me, it would work out for the both of us. I mean, you are dedicating a large chunk of your time to an organization or a program where it really is like you have to sort of build this mutual relationship where you want to give and you also want to get in return, and you just want to make sure it's beneficial on both ends. So
yes, I love that you said that. And so many students, I think, don't see it that way. They think it's all about being chosen, but you have to equally choose your school if you want to be happy and make your investment in time well spent. Great advice. So what I want to kind of ask you here, for those, after you got your first 3 rejections from those 3 interviews, how did that make you feel and what kept you moving forward?
So I would initially say I was surprised to be rejected. I don't know that I would say expected, because I don't think anybody wants to expect rejection. But right after the first rejection, I think the way I felt was kind of defeated. After the first shock set in, the first hour, I felt quite defeated. I went back, did some self-reflecting, and I wrote down a bunch of information that, like, what did I say during the interview? And could I have done something better? Was I sitting up properly? I mean, I was microanalyzing all the way down to a T.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the way it made me feel, the one thing that I've really kept like close to me was that rejection kind of makes you feel like there's a hole in you that you need to fill, whether it's like emotional or just like the drive to do it. It kind of gave me more energy to want to do better. I didn't recognize that until probably 2 weeks afterwards, when I had a long discussion with a mentor of mine at work who kind of mentioned to me, like, if you don't fail, you'll never succeed. And I was like, that's a really interesting way to put any sort of defeat, is like, that's how a lot of great inventions have happened, through failure or through accident. So why not just get back on the horse and try again?
That's awesome. And I actually, you guys, if you're listening, that right there is a definition of grit. In my opinion, someone who faces failure and almost wants the success more and will do whatever it takes to not accept defeat. I mean, essentially, it really builds that character and like just pushes you harder. And like you said, learning from your experiences versus kind of accepting them, So yeah, I think that's a great, so again, so that was the first cycle, 3 schools. And then you went on to have, an additional 9 rejections. So that means you went through that whole cycle 2 additional times on top of the first time before you actually gained your acceptance. And during all that, did you have the same mentality, or was there any point that you thought maybe you're going to give up? Or I'm just really curious, out of dealing with all of that, did you reflect back on those same words that your mentor gave you to kind of keep you going through that?
Well, just one thing to highlight right before I answer that direct question. I think the important thing to know about using grit, as you say, is that it was just something I wanted. This was something that was it was a passion of mine. I had shadowed, I had seen it in my experience, and it was something that I wanted. I think if you really want it, it's never, no, it's not going to be an option for you. You're going to dedicate yourself and push yourself to be better and learn and grow as much as you can in order to fulfill or to find success, because success is really a pathway rather than a place. So one of my really famous mentors, who's actually a musical artist, he said the road to the path to success is always under construction. So you're like always constantly working on it in order to continue to get there, but you hopefully will never reach it. So that way you continue to grow.
Wow. So great, Mike. Thank you. This is awesome.
Yeah.
You're full of great advice. I love it.
Yeah, I know a lot of these are like proverbial, but
no, it's great.
It does kind of feel like that. I know you. So the question you kind of mentioned was, what did I do with dealing with all the rejections? Did I become more prepared going forward? Did I keep with the same mindset? Originally, yes, I stuck with the same mindset. I think through the next couple, quite frankly, I kind of blanket applied. Like I had chosen some schools that I knew that my particular statistics would fit into, and I knew that I could apply to with like my CCRN and my GPA. So what I did was I just kept applying, and I applied everywhere. Anywhere that would take an application from me that I fulfilled the quota for, I did, because I figured if I could get an interview and I really liked what they had to offer me, at the end of the day, even if I got rejected, it was still an experience I could learn from. Now, probably past 5 or 6, I did start to feel like I couldn't do it. I felt like I was about to give up. I even had a long conversation with my parents about, like, we sat down one night at dinner and I was like, what do I do from here? If I face rejection, I kept saying this cycle, meaning the portion between start and finish of the applications, meaning cycle. If I got rejected during the next cycle, would I just give up? Would I pursue a different route? Was there another option for me? I think after 5 or 6, I really sat down and had a long conversation about, should I give up? And the conversation kind of went about, the best you can do is the best you can do. That's all you can do is your best. So at the end of the day, if that's what you're giving and you're preparing yourself and you're prepping and you're doing these practice interviews and you get on there and you give it 100%, and it's, maybe you're not getting accepted for whatever reason, just kind of, take it as best you can and move on. But I think right after 5 or 6, it did change my mindset. I went in after 5 or 6 with the mindset of, I don't care. And not, I don't care as in I'm not passionate about doing it. I don't care about getting rejected.
Love it.
Which I think made me stronger, because I would go in with less nervousness, less anxiety, less confusion about when I was asked a question, how was I going to answer it? It was just kind of flying off the plate, off the cuff. I was answering things, I feel like, more articulately. I was more confident in my answers. And I just kind of went with that mindset, like, I have nothing, I'll leave with nothing. Because after a while, when you get rejected enough, it's like, okay, well, I can't, you're used to it, I guess is the word. Like, you build an armor to it.
Yes. But I love how you said the no pressure and the less nerves aspect of it, because truly, I'm sure that helped the fact that you were like, well, here goes another one, and I'm just going to be myself, and they're going to take me or they're going to leave me. So I like that, how it, even though it wasn't fun to experience that, it actually made you more confident and less nervous to go into the next interview, because you figured, not only what do you have to lose, but, either they're going to take me or they're not, and I can't change that. And so, but I also want to point out too, number one, you said mindset. So you guys, mindset, in my opinion, and I totally agree with Mike, that is probably the most key aspect in the beginning when you're going into your CRNA interviews, is to have the right mindset. And essentially, obviously, you want to hope for that acceptance. You want to anticipate that acceptance, but be realistic. So know that you may need 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, hopefully not 12 or 13 attempts, but the long game, persistence is key. If you're persistent enough, and like you said, you're passionate and you want this enough, you're going to make it happen. It's just a matter of when, not if, it's when. And then number 2, you pointed out, which I love that you did, was support. You reached out to your parents for guidance, and you guys, it doesn't matter who it is. It could be your dog, if that's all, but you have to feel that you have support. You have to talk to someone about, especially when you're starting to feel that mindset kind of shift a little bit. And the fact that you recognize that when you needed it and you actually sought out the help, I guarantee that played a pivotal part of you continuing on your journey. If you were to hold those feelings inside and just kind of let yourself crumble, more than likely you would have actually given up. But the fact that you've reached out to your support at a pivotal moment in your journey to CRNA is what really kept you going. It kind of confirmed that, yes, I just got to it's the best I can do, and I'm going to keep going. So I love those 2 takeaways from that. Next question that I have for you is, we actually already went over that. But I do want to kind of talk about your stats a little bit, because your stats are good. And so what I want, because everyone always mentions stats, and I think as some people, it's kind of an annoying question because people always want to know stats. And I know personally that does not matter. Stats are stats, but schools look past that. They look at the person, and it doesn't necessarily mean that if they don't want you, you're not the right person or you're a bad person. It just means there's more to it. There's way more to it. And like you've experienced, you can know people, you can have the good stats and do all the things, but sometimes it just doesn't pan out. It doesn't mean you're not qualified, you're not going to be a great CRNA, but sometimes it just is not the right fit. And you got to move on and either try again or try a different school. But one thing I want to back up to a little bit is, you told me from the very beginning, things like the CCRN, you saw it as a recommendation and not a requirement. And so therefore you didn't necessarily think you needed it. So let's talk about that.
Sure. So I know we did talk about this at length, actually. A lot of the times you'll go onto the website and you'll look at, what's required, or you'll look at the information package. And the thing I read all the time is recommended, but not required. So to everybody, including me, recommended, but not required meant, it's all good. I don't need that. So in the first set of applications, within the first 3 or 4, I did not have a CCRN. I figured it's recommended, but not required. And if I'm still getting an interview, I know that I'm still a decent applicant. But I realized quickly when I was reviewing with some schools and reviewing with some friends who, have already taken this pathway, recommended, but not required is not an option. It's actually required, but silently required.
And it's a trick. It's a trick.
It is. It's kind of a mind game. And I think the important thing is you just look at it as if they're writing it on there, it's probably something I should have. Mm-hmm. If they're mentioning it, it's probably something I should have. That's why I avoided some schools with the GRE specifically, because I just didn't take it. But if they do mention it's recommended but not required, it's required. I think that's some good advice going forward. Just work hard, study for the CCRN. I think it almost might be a must at this point, going into the any application cycle at any school. It might not be, but as far as I'm concerned and what I've been told in feedback, I think it is.
Yes. And so that is definitely key. Same to be said with shadowing experience, you guys. If they recommend it, it means do it. And even schools who don't even say anything about shadowing experience, they still like to see it. It still shows initiative and curiosity and desire to want to be a CRNA. So it still always looks good. But one other thing you said too, that I want to make sure I make a point to say is, you were reaching out to these schools for feedback after your interviews to see, hey, what can I do better? And so that is key. People who either get waitlisted or get rejected and just do nothing and then try again next time, you really did yourself no favors at all. You really need to try to get some feedback. Now, I know that can be easier said than done. Some schools will give you tons of feedback. Some will give you crickets. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try. It means you need to try and try and try again until someone can give you some type of feedback. And also that's also where, we can come into play too. Richard Wilson, he's a faculty member who works with me inside CRNA School Prep Academy. He gives students feedback on their application or failed attempt, I should say, at schools or whatever the issue may be. And actually, we just welcomed a new team member who's another faculty member to do the one-on-one consultations. His name is Winston King. So yeah, I just don't want you guys to ever feel like you don't have anyone to give you feedback, because whether you're getting crickets, just know that there is help out there, and you really, to go forward, I think that's really key, to get feedback in some shape or fashion. But yeah, and I guess I'm kind of curious actually, Mike, because I've never actually asked you this, and I could actually look, but I haven't. So forgive me. When did you find CRNA School Prep Academy during all this?
So it started, originally I came across it as a Facebook group, I think in somewhere in 2019, probably mid to late 29, early.
Wow. So you found me from the beginning. I started the group in May of 2019.
Yeah, it was probably towards December, I would say. I had a friend actually recommend it to me as a great resource. And I kind of got on there and read some of the posts, and I was like, man, I can relate to a lot of the people, the questions, the information. And then I joined the Prep Academy through the module portal online aspect of it when you launched. I think I joined within the first month.
Awesome.
And I was accessing those resources automatically. I mean, I was using them as a reference for everything, the practice questions, the videos you had posted, things like that. They were so vital to kind of my preparation. And I think they did help me succeed.
Awesome. That's so good to hear. Yeah. I'm always curious too, because some people, again, have been around for a long time before I even knew I was going to start a academy. I didn't even know when I first started the Facebook group that it would turn into what it turned into. But just the success that students are having is just so inspirational that, I was like, oh my gosh, got to keep going. We got to, because there's resources out there, but whether they're accurate or not is kind of the big question. And then you said you spent tons of time on the forum. And sometimes I think that can be misleading, because one person's experience doesn't mean it's going to be your experience. And so what worked for someone else may not work for you. And so I think that's key when you guys are reading forums, to know that variations exist, because all schools are a little different. And as you know, through 12 different interviews, or maybe I think we discussed it was 9 total different schools, they're all a little different. So let's kind of get into that. What was maybe some differences in the interview styles that you experienced, and maybe some kind of insider insight that you could share with everyone to kind of give them some information on that?
Sure. So I felt like they were all similar, but very different. I know that's not very good advice, but everyone starts off with a want to get to know you. And I think that this is really important. Through the first couple interviews I had, I did not know how to answer this question properly. It's important, I think, when they ask about you, it's important to inject a fun fact about you, not necessarily like, oh, I can eat 100 sour gummy worms or something outlandish like that, but mentioning something that you do specifically. I think what's something that helped bolster me as an applicant was I mentioned COVID-19 a lot, because our unit does get hit with that a lot. And one thing that was important about that is I actually got feedback immediately from either people in the interview or other students who were applying that, oh, I can't believe you're doing that. So kind of giving yourself, just try to separate yourself a little bit is a great option. Same thing if you're applying out of state, make sure you mention that you are applying from out of state. I think it shows resilience, that you're willing to step out of your comfort zone and kind of travel and get out. But they were all sort of similar. The one thing that was very important is know medications that you use. And I got beat up with this pretty bad in one interview. I mean, I got taken down. I was asked direct questions about medications, and I was like a deer in headlights. And then I got ran over. So, and it's important that I learned that lesson, though, because it taught me things that I didn't know beforehand. One of the tips I could definitely give, in especially today's climate of interview, is now that a lot of them are on Zoom due to COVID. So what I've been doing is immediately following the interview, I will write down every question I was asked, or try to write them all down. And then I will review them myself. Like, how did I answer this question? How did I look at the response? And then it helped me prepare for another interview, because the questions were not the same, but they were similar in the aspect of what direction they wanted the conversation to head.
Yes, I
Um,
love it. Great advice.
yeah, so I took a lot of notes. Learn from your experience. Look at the style of the interview. Was it more laid back? Is it personality based? I did find a majority. I would say 70% personality, 30% informational. There were schools that kind of hit information a little more, like knowing your drugs, knowing pressors is a really big one.
Hmm.
So it's important to kind of do your research on that. And if you talk about something in an interview, just understand you're now putting it on a pedestal, putting a light on that word or that drug or that fact that you mentioned, and it is subject to be discussed. So
Yes.
don't talk above your belt or your pay grade, because they will hit you with it. They will want to know that information. And that was something I got hit with as well. That's hopefully something someone can take.
That's a great piece of advice. Another thing too, you guys, is your resume. I have heard schools who literally have your resume sitting in front of them. So if you're listing CRRT, but maybe you've only done it a few times, you put it on your resume. So you better make sure you can discuss it in detail. Same with the balloon pump or whatever it may be. Anything on your resume is fair game to discuss. So yeah, but anything you mention as well. So if they ask you a question and you mention something else, well, then you better don't mention it if you can't discuss it thoroughly. And I also want to say too, when you're in your interview, it's okay to have pauses. It's okay to stop and think. Don't think you need to continuously talk to have a good interview. You can take a moment and think. But they also know that some schools want to keep you moving at a pretty good clip. So they might not give you all the time to sit there and think. If you don't know it, they may just move on to the next question, because they're trying to gauge your knowledge level on a 10-15 minute basis. Sometimes that's all you have. Other schools may interview for a half hour. So all that can vary quite a bit. I guess I kind of want to just kind of sum all this up too with, if you knew what you know now, would you have done anything differently? Or do you have like, or do you think the way it worked out perfectly?
That's a good question. I think I think the way I look at it as, I'm happy that it went the way it did, because I learned so much about myself and about the things that I can do to better prepare myself for any adversity, just not this particular one. There are things I wish I did differently. Number one, recommended but not required. I'm going to hit that 100
Mhm.
times because I got bit by that snake pretty badly. Another thing that I learned through my interview processes is that have information at the ready. Do your research on the school, on the locations, hospital systems in that area. So, and that's something I didn't do very well of, because I was blanket applying to just try to get the experience and get myself kind of moving. That, I was questioning, like, why this school? And
Mm.
sometimes the answer of, the health networks and, oh, the name of it, that's just not enough.
Mhm.
It's important to have like a fact that you really appreciate about the school that kind of resonates with you personally. Early application is incredibly important.
Mhm.
I actually went through the whole process of applying to a school and then received immediate rejection because of the fact that it was so late in the application cycle that they had already taken, I guess, their maxed out amount of applicants for the interview process. So I missed out on that. And I know some schools have a priority lane and a regular lane. So you might as well ignore the regular lane and just try to get into the priority. It's like the easy pass. You
Yeah.
just want to be in the easy pass lane.
Yes.
You want to try to avoid anything like that. Put yourself first. Make sure you're prepared. Those are things I would kind of start with as words of advice, and just realize that at the end of the day, if you do get rejected, and it does seem to happen, that self-reflect and just realize, you know what, maybe it wasn't the best fit for you. Sometimes it's not necessarily you didn't do a good job, or hey, I'm not ready. It could just be that the two of you didn't match. I mean, everybody you go on a date with isn't somebody you end up with in the end. So it's kind of the same mental state of just go in with it, be who you are, because at the end of the day, it's 3 years or more in some cases. And you want to be yourself the entire time. You don't want to change for anybody else or anything else. So.
Yeah. That's excellent advice. And those are actually like really great words of like, just to leave you guys with those words. But one last thing that I want to mention to you when you talked about this the other day too, was networking. And I do stress this, I hope quite a lot. I try to anyways. But you kind of learn this importance, yourself by your experience. So I guess what are some takeaways that helped you as far as networking?
So definitely, I'll hit it. CRNA Prep Academy.
No.
Get on. You're laughing, but I'm serious. People post in there, and I actually took. They probably don't know it, but there are people who posted things in there, and then I would reference their post, not their name, just the information they provided during an interview, and then they'd be like, "Oh, wow, that's I didn't know that about us, or that you thought that was important to you." So definitely CRNA Prep Academy. Another thing that I found to be important was when I saw CRNAs, even in the cafeteria or when I was shadowing or things like that, I took information from them and I said, "Hey, is there anybody that I could reach out to about either any of these schools or who went to these locations or lived near these locations?" And you'd be surprised. CRNAs know other CRNAs who know other CRNAs. It's kind of a tight-knit community. So if you want to know somebody, you just have to be progressive. You have to ask. You just have to put yourself out there, send the text message, send the email, and kind of work to network, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And like you said, this community is very small. So chances are, I know CRNAs in Alaska, Hawaii. And I'm from Ohio, but they're all my classmates. And then my coworkers, I have connections through my coworkers. So 100% CRNAs know other CRNAs who can help you, or even current SRNAs. I, at this point, have a large network of SRNAs. So chances are, if you ask me, "Hey, Jenny, do you know an SRNA at this college?" I probably do to some extent. So yeah, you just have to ask. You just have to reach out and ask. And it definitely helps talk to a current student, not only to give current information on their interview style, but just how do they like it? Do they like the program? Do they feel supported? Because remember, you're making this decision for yourself too. It's not just them picking you. You want to see if the students there are happy and whether they're getting fulfilled, both academically and clinically. So it really goes a long way to talk to the current student. Plus, I know like back when I applied, I had a current student put in a good word for me. That never hurts. I didn't actually ask them to. I found out after the fact. But, if you have a friend who's a class ahead of you or 2 classes ahead of you, it never hurts for them to go up to the program director and say, "Hey, I know a really great ICU nurse is going to be applying. Keep an eye out for her. This is her name." That's it. And yeah, so that kind of stuff definitely pays off. And there's one other thing. Oh, CRNA School Prep Academy. So, CRNA School Prep Academy, while it is new, it just launched in February 2020, right before COVID, actually. We're growing in the fact that schools are now taking notice in the fact that we're sending them students. And a lot of students or a lot of faculty are finding out these students are hearing about their programs through us, that we're doing education with them as ICU nurses. We do monthly education. And so, of course, CRNA School Prep Academy is a great thing to put on your resume, just like diversity CRNA is a great thing, just like going to anesthesia conferences are a great thing. If you can find a way to go to an anesthesia conference, either through the AANA as a sponsored student or a nurse, or a local state association meeting, which, trust me, there's opportunities. You just have to look for and seek them out. That looks great on your resume. It shows investment in the community before you're even in the community as a CRNA. And that shows your dedication and how much you want this career path. So definitely look for things like that to get involved in. And yeah, I love your words of advice kind of leading out of this interview is to just kind of self-reflect and see whether the school is a good fit for you. So if you face rejection, first of all, it's not the end. Second of all, yes, 100%.
No, it is not.
Like you said, self-reflect, write things down, come up with a game plan to move forward. If you feel like your mindset is starting to suffer, reach out for support. All of this stuff, you guys, should be really big key takeaways. And then just persistence. Don't give up. Don't stop. And know that, again, not every school is the right school for you. Even if you think it's your dream school, you have to be willing sometimes to step out of your comfort zone and try something different. And I know some people are limited based on family factors or financial factors, and that is unfortunate. And if that's you I'm speaking to, make sure you're reaching out to the program to see what you can do to better your odds. Some schools will actually limit your application to 1 or 2 tries. And they don't necessarily openly announce this on their website. I've only found this out through talking to faculty and current students. So before you apply for the second time, maybe make sure you know that you're bringing it all to the table, and make sure you know if they have a limit. Do they, like I've been told, or I think you told me actually, that some schools, even though you can apply unlimited amount of times, you were told by program faculty by the third or fourth application, it's kind of a waste. Is that correct?
Yeah, they kind of mentioned that they know the name, they know the application. So unless there's like a gigantic stark improvement from one to the other, it's just a pass.
Yes. So that's exactly it. If you're applying with the same stuff over and over and over again, I mean, it's going to get the same result. You know, I think the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. Right.
Yeah.
So do something different. That's, and it's saying, like, if you guys are ever in a nasty airway or doing something in clinical that's not working, you got to do something different. You can't do the same technique. It's not working. It might have worked for the last patient, but it's not going to work for this patient. Same to be said for CRNA applications. You have to change it up. You have to do something different to kind of give you either a more competitive edge, get more involved, network, take another graduate level course. This is why the feedback is so important. So it'll keep you moving forward, and not only moving forward, but moving forward with more arsenal, like more power behind you to actually gain that acceptance. But yeah, Mike, this interview was awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. Is there anything else you want to say before we leave everyone to settle in these thoughts?
No, I just want to say thank you. I know a lot of people mentioned this on the Facebook page, but thank you so much, Jenny. You have no idea. You're an inspiration to others.
Well,
you're an inspiration to me. So I really appreciate it. I know that you're taking time out of your busy schedule and your family's time to go ahead and put out information and resources for us. So I really do appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much. Honestly, it's been kind of a labor of love. And, you know, I really do love each and every one of my students, getting to know you guys. That's what's made this so enjoyable from the very beginning, which is why I knew I had to continue to go with it. But yeah, you're more than welcome. And I'm so thankful you found us, you're in the community, and I'm excited for your journey. Woohoo. That's actually another favorite part, is getting to watch you grow and blossom into a CRNA. So, you know, yeah, thank you as well. And everyone listening, again, I'll have my email in the show notes. It's Jenny Fennell at CRNA School Prep.Academy. I know it's kind of weird, but it's a .academy, not a .com. Reach out to me if you have any questions. And again, if you're facing rejection, keep your chin up, keep moving forward. I promise, you know, if you make the right changes and do the right things, you will get that acceptance at some point. And Mike here, again, 12 rejections, 1 acceptance. It doesn't matter how many rejections you have an acceptance. That's all that matters. You're moving forward. You're going to school. So thank you for sharing, Mike. I know you're going to inspire so many people to not give up on their dreams. You are an inspiration. So thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me share a lot of this information. Hopefully I can help others, you know, keep going.
I'm sure you will. Thank you.